Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to today's CIPS download webinar. I'm James Moore, part of the CIPS content and editorial team, and I'll be hosting and facilitating the session today. And I'll also be on hand to ask our speakers any of your questions. Look, we're delighted to have you with us today as we'll be addressing the subject of conflict and contract management with suppliers. Unfortunately, it's the nature of business, especially in today's environment where rapid change is the norm, as is market volatility, and they've become almost a universal experience. So ultimately, it can impact delivery of projects and affect supplier relationships. But we're here today to find out how technology can help you address this challenge, and specifically the emerging role of AI in doing so. Our expert speakers will give us an exciting glimpse into what they believe is the future of conflict management, where AI can help you better manage your supplier relationships and give you the time back that you need. We'll meet the speakers shortly, but please bear with me a moment as I run through a couple of housekeeping notes. There's lots we've already got planned to through today, as well as a few slides, but there will also be plenty of time for questions. As ever, one of the key benefits of joining us live for our CIPS download webinars is that you can ask the speakers what you'd like to know. So please do use the question function, which you should find on your screen just below the video player you can see me in. If you're viewing on a PC screen, you can opt to watch us in full screen, but please note that you just need to minimize to use that Q&A function that I've just mentioned. And it's also worth noting that today's webinar is being recorded and will be shared with you afterwards. So if you have any connection issues or something urgent comes up, don't worry, you will be able to watch back on demand. Though obviously, if you can stay with us, please do. So with housekeeping done, let's have a quick look at the agenda for today. As you can see, we're going to be taking a bit of a deep dive into artificial intelligence, addressing how it's transforming the procurement space and the rate of change that we're seeing, as well as the specific role of large language models, or LLMs as they're better known. We'll be doing all this in the context of how AI can be used in negotiations and in conflict resolution, specifically for procurement and supply professionals. This could include reading long and complex contract agreements and also questioning what ultimate impact it may have on your supplier relationships. And we'll ask our speakers how AI understands human sentiment and emotions, as well as the practical considerations for how procurement can overcome the challenges of integrating the emerging tech into their own tech stacks. It's a fast-paced, evolving sort of area. So that is a real challenge for a lot of procurement professionals, and we hear that time and again. So we'll look at that today. And we'll also cover the difference between an AI native solution and one that is enhanced by AI, looking at the nuances between them and finishing on some of the key opportunities and challenges ahead, as well as having some time, of course, for your questions. But that's enough for me. Let's introduce the experts and stars of the show, shall we? So firstly, we have Fayiola Maria Jack, CEO at Resolutiion. Faye, welcome. Do you want to just introduce yourself and for those who may not know you, give a brief overview of Resolutiion and what you're all about?
Absolutely. It's lovely to be with you all today on this webinar. I am CEO of Resolutiion, as James has mentioned. I've spent many years working, leading legal and procurement teams across Europe, EMEA, the US, and I decided to turn over to technology to build a platform to support the community that I've come from. So Resolutiion is an AI platform. It's agentic AI, which we'll go into later, but it's focused on relationships and it helps procurement teams deal with all those complex parts of the supplier environment and relationships that were previously just reserved for human beings. So it's about helping you with your productivity and to do more with now AI.
Brilliant. Thanks, Faye. It's an incredibly pertinent time to be talking about this topic. It's fast paced and evolving as we've seen over the last few years, but we're, from a couple of conversations that I've been having in the last couple of weeks, we're now really seeing it going beyond that kind of experimental phase and now kind of trialing into procurement functions. So it's moving on as at pace. And we also have Kazia Hevelt with us, head of AI and data at Resolutiion. So hi, Kazia, do you want to just introduce yourself as well and share a little bit about your background and where your expertise lies?
Sure. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I am leading AI at Resolutiion. My background is basically in data science, machine learning, modeling.
Brilliant. Perfect insight and expertise then for all the technical side of things that we'll talk through today. So look, thank you both, and it's great to have you with us today. And a huge thank you, of course, to Resolution for supporting today's webinar and for joining us as a CIPS official knowledge partner program this year. You can find out more about Resolution on our knowledge partners page on the CIPS main website, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. But they'll be sharing some fantastic content with you over the coming months, so do keep an eye on that page. But let's get going. I think we'll start by setting the scene a little bit, looking at the kind of procurement environment. And if we could, I think we've got a slide that we can now bring up and we'll have alongside us. So Faye, many people have expressed a lot of excitement about AI's ability to transform business. What do you think, in your words, of what's so exciting about AI, and particularly in the context of transforming the procurement space?
Absolutely. So the procurement life cycle is really complex, and you can see that with the diagram that's on the screen. And previously, we've had software, and software has been brilliant in terms of the administration and process. But there are additional pain points that just about every procurement team kind of faces into. And a lot of those require the doing that only humans have been able to do to date. And many teams, we are looking at resource issues, time issues. So AI has just come in at a perfect time to support all of that with the more complex tasks. So when we think about those pain points, I've mentioned kind of time, but you have time issues, you have disruption in the supply chain, you have financial leakage. These are all the things that we're working hard to try and plug and resolve. And a big part of this is conflict. That's one of the areas that we focus on. So when we think of conflict, sometimes people think of big legal claims or disputes. It's not that. It's where there are issues with maybe delivery or performance or quality or compliance, and you're facing into conversations that are difficult, you negotiate, you kind of reach a stalemate. That is conflict. It can be good, but it can be negative. And what we're focused in on is making sure that when that arises, it's resolved quickly so that you don't get all of those negative parts. And to date, that was a human activity, and now AI can do that really, really well. And so that's exciting. And beyond conflict, there are so many areas in that process that AI can help with. And if I think of a few examples, so some of the companies we've been speaking to have asked, oh, can the platform help with liquidated damages, or can it help with bids and scoring? Absolutely. And those were things that were reserved for people. But now the AI can get involved as well and just help with that capacity and productivity.
Yeah, and I suppose the key message that strikes me from that is, AI can enable procurement to go beyond the day to day. It can enable you to become more strategic. It can enable you to get involved in conflicts, as you say, whether it be positive or negative, at a kind of post initial point which allows them to come in at a time when you really do need human context, human involvement, and build those relationships. You look at the life cycle there, and the amount of areas that conflict can touch upon, and contract management, stakeholders, relationship management, risk and resilience, supply development, all of these things. And is that how you feel AI has got the real potential here to kind of give that extra enablement?
Absolutely, and particularly with agentic AI. So we're going to go into the different types, but in a nutshell, non-technical, Kasia can cover the technical part, but agentic AI is about specifically trained AI. So our AI is trained to be commercial. It's trained specifically for procurement teams, and you see that in different use cases. So there are sales tools, for example, that are specifically trained agentic AI. And that's what makes it really exciting as well, because the AI is almost like a trained expert person that can support with the complexities that we didn't have support with to date.
Fantastic, and perfect kind of flow to ask a little bit more about agentic AI, Kasia. Look, we know AI is evolving at a really fast rate. Generative AI has been the buzzword since, for the last few years, since the introduction of the kind of open platforms that everybody has started to use and experiment with, ChatGPT, Gemini, all of these kinds of things. AI has obviously been around for a lot longer than just that as well, but generative AI has been that step. I'm now hearing, and I'm sure a lot of procurement professionals are now hearing that term agentic AI. Can you, Faye's given a really great kind of overview there, but can you just give us a little bit more detail? How exactly would you describe agentic AI, and why is it deemed superior to maybe other sort of forms of AI that have come before?
Sure. It is said that agentic AI is the term of 2025. So I hope after this session you have better understanding what it is actually. So basically, agentic AI is a type of artificial intelligence that can think ahead, plan its own steps, and take actions without needing constant human guidance. So basically, you're letting the large language model decide how many times to run until it's found a resolution. For example, talking to a customer for customer support or iterating on code changes, something we don't know how many steps it takes, that's considered an agent. We do not predefine the path of what steps the agent should take. So unlike regular AI, which mostly responds to commands or questions, agentic AI actively works towards a goal by breaking tasks into smaller steps and deciding the best way to complete them. And these agentic AI systems can be equipped with tools, as Faye just mentioned. These tools can be like sales APIs, basically APIs which help them connect to other software, or databases which store and process information. And this allows them to communicate with these tools, gather, analyze the output from these tools, and use the data to make smart decisions. Agentic AI is superior. It's great because it reduces the need for human to constantly supervise it, make it more efficient and capable of handling complex problems.
Brilliant. And as you say, it's much more specific and focused and targeted at a particular outcome, which I suppose gives it greater context. Would you still set parameters for it? Say I just had in my head the idea that, and this may be a silly question, but the idea that there's a negotiation going on with an AI tool. Can you set a parameter to say after 4 or 5 attempts of going back and forth, bring in a human into the sort of process,
Yeah.
or does that kind of defeat its purpose?
Yes, actually, this is possible to set some sort of loop stop once, like when the agent's supposed to stop looping through the same problem. It is possible. However, is it advice? I wouldn't be sure because the key idea behind the agent is to actually think as long as it needs, take the outputs from different tools, as long as it find the resolution for the problem. So it is possible, but depending on the use case, maybe not advisable.
Fair enough. Yeah, I had a feeling that might be the response, but it's interesting to know that there can be parameters set if people are worried that it might end up in that kind of loop process. Sort of thinking more broadly, Faye, if I bring you back in here, that obviously the need for stronger and more resilient supplier relationships is critical to procurement. We're seeing this even more as part of a resilient setup for a lot of procurement and supply chain professionals today, and CIPS members are often talking about it on the CIPS Connect platform. How do you strengthen your supplier relationships? How do you develop them? And particularly in that current climate, there's a lot of volatility. Maintaining them are vital to kind of supply chain success, I suppose. So how can procurement leaders, I suppose, strike that balance between process optimization and focusing on the process and making it more efficient, and ensuring stronger relationships in the same breath?
Yeah. So the big piece is it's not any particular sector, industry, or company. It is universal. There are just universal challenges. And I think the really positive thing is that we have really robust platforms that already deal with the administration and the process. So now I always challenge procurement leaders to think about their technology stack. So think about all of the tools at their disposal to help them with the challenges, and challenges have evolved over time. So yes, you need that foundational administrative system to help you with all the core things, but now you need to introduce new layers of technology and tools as well. So when you think about your challenges, maybe you map them on a piece of paper that you have, you can now bring in AI to deal with each of those things. So previously where you may have said, okay, well, I need to pass that to a team and maybe the team don't have capacity, now you can pass it to AI. And that is fantastic because it means that you can quickly get through the list of burning issues using technology. And I think when you think about the number of suppliers in many environments, the fact that in the life cycle, you're not just buying, but then you have to manage that relationship as you continue to buy new solutions. AI is so timely in terms of what it can do to support with all of that complexity.
Fantastic. And staying on that kind of note around disputes, what are your, you've got a background in this and you kind of understand the world of disputes, and conflicts, which, as you said, could be both positive and negative. But what are the sort of challenges that commonly lead to disputes between buyers and suppliers that might impact supplier relationships?
Yeah, so it's diverse, and certainly there are certain challenges that are more common to certain industries, but more generally, you go through the process and you have a bid process. Sometimes there are issues at that stage in terms of who was awarded, and there are challenges at that point. But at the point that you onboard and you sign the contract and you go live, well, now you have to deliver against the contract, against the relationship. And that's where issues kick in. So it can be things like gaps in the contract terms or ambiguities. I've seen many challenges where standard terms are used. So those standard terms don't necessarily fit the scope as well as they could do to be able to guide that relationship. And then in life, there are things like late delivery or non-compliance with requirements or ambiguous terms that have been interpreted differently by both sides. And now you need to unpick what that means whilst you're in life delivering. So change as well, that's a big one. So no business is static. Needs, the requirements may shift as time goes on. That also triggers lots of disputes between buyers and suppliers. And when I say disputes, I don't mean litigation, but just that really strong conflict where you're kind of facing into meaningful disagreements that you have to unpick. So it's a broad range and it's non-exhaustive. I'm sure people on this webinar can think of many more challenges they've had to face into and are probably facing into at the moment. But that is why AI is such a timely tool in terms of what it can do to deal with complexities like that crop up in the relationship. And if I give an example, because working examples are nice. So I'll give one from our platform where, imagine you have a quality issue and you've got a, 500-page contract that's got loads of annexes and everything. Well, what the AI can do is quickly read through that contract, understand what the obligations actually were, and put forward a sensible route forward. That saves so much time. And is just a really practical way of efficiently picking through issues.
Yeah, really, really interesting. It's actually worth bringing in a quick question at this point because we're sort of just not long off the agentic AI. It's a great question for Maria, and maybe one for you, Kasia. Can you please explain the meaning of AI-powered agentic workflows and how that links with a sort of decision intelligence system or decision intelligence platform?
Yes, I can give a general bit and then Kasia, you can come in technically. But I give an example of our platform because that's nice and easy. So our AI is trained to deal with conflict and disputes. That means that it's been tuned and trained to be brilliant at that area versus something like ChatGPT, which is very general and it's pulling information off the internet. Sometimes it's giving you factual information and sometimes it's just giving you an answer because it knows that it should, and actually it's not factually accurate because it's a very general tool. So that's how I'd start at a kind of high level, that you have models that are built to deal with specific things versus general things like ChatGPT.
Brilliant. And Kasia, anything to add? I mean, I guess a follow-up question might be, how exactly is it trained? What does that look like? But also feel free to add to Faye's comments.
Okay, so there are several techniques. And again, depending on the use case, whether we are analyzing documents or we are trying to put some suggestions or recommendation, it depends on what techniques we are going to use. But basically, these models from providers such as OpenAI or Anthropic or Google, many different providers, we can treat them as a base models, meaning, yes, they do have some knowledge. They do deeply understand the language, which is crucial for us because we want model which talks in English. We want model which just talk to clients, to a customer. And using these different techniques, we are basically putting some information we are training in on the dispute resolution with specific sectors, with specific industries, with specific use cases, in a way that it deeply understands not only the language at this point, but also the use case it is used for.
Brilliant, and it's all about that context, right? And that's where agentic AI maybe gives that extra level of input and helps with that sort of decision flow when it comes to the output. Brilliant, and look, thanks for the question already. Please do send your questions in. I'll bring them in where natural, but we do have some time at the end as well to kind of ask any additional questions. And also, as Faye mentioned, there are any conflicts you've got going on at the moment or have had previously, please do feel free to put them in and we can read them out and maybe put it to our experts about how AI could support that particular use case. But also I'm sure many others will kind of benefit from just hearing that they're not the only ones involved in challenging conflicts at the moment. So we'll move on slightly and you mentioned it briefly there, Kasia, about large language models, about the language that it understands, and got a great slide to bring up here on LLMs. So with the advancement of LLMs, large language models, how do you envision them transforming the way we kind of handle supplier conflict and disputes in the next few years?
Sure. I think this is the best moment to briefly remind or explain what is the large language model. So think of large language models as a heart of AI-powered solutions, such as automation tools or chatbots, or our platform also uses large language models, of course. These large language models, these AI systems, process, analyze massive amounts of data. So in the end, as I already said, it deeply understands the language to help businesses make smarter and data-driven decisions. In supplier negotiations and dispute resolution, LLMs can quickly analyze documents or track pricing trends and assess supplier performance, provide real-time insights, making negotiations more strategic and efficient. And by using AI, businesses can reduce manual effort and minimize error and speed up decision making. And in the future, these technologies will become even more advanced and widely adopted. We are already seeing large language models being launched almost every day. We have an example just from Monday when Anthropic released their newest reasoning model, Claude 3.7. And these models are constantly improving their accuracy, decision-making capabilities. And in the near future, or even now, AI will automate contract reviews and even assist in real-time negotiations through AI-driven chatbots. And what is crucial right now, that businesses that embrace these innovations will be able not only to negotiate smarter, but also resolve dispute faster and strengthen supplier relationship, which is giving them a competitive edge in increasing fast-paced market.
Fantastic. And Faye, is there anything to add to that? I guess one question that a couple of comments on already is, how do you know that it's accurate, and how can you confirm that the information that or the language that it's using and the prompts and the outputs that it gives are accurate based on its own context and understanding of any given situation?
Yeah, so starts with the training, and I gave that example of ChatGPT, which is more general and makes things up. So with specific models. They can be trained to understand the subject matter, i.e. procurement, the rules around it, the ways of working, best practice. But also what's really important, and this hasn't been touched on yet, is human loop. So all good platforms will have a human loop. It's really important for quality. So I never recommend just letting AI loose. And we have really specific processes within our organization with a human loop to make sure the quality stays high, but also to tune the models and make sure they're performing as well as they can. So that's one important piece that I would mention. Any platform that says it's just AI without that, you should probably be a bit suspicious, because you need that human loop in there, not just to check quality, but to help the AI improve as well.
Brilliant. And we've had a question there about, the guarantees on the accuracy of AI in reviewing contracts, and we'll come on to that in the next slide in a second. But what guarantees can you offer? Is it the fact that a human should be in the loop in this process at times, and there should be a constant review of, okay, this is the output of the AI in the last few days. This was how accurate was this? Or was there anything else you could add to that?
So for us, we're looking at the outputs and making sure they're correct. You tend to find if the model's been built well and tuned well, actually you don't have issues. And some of the tasks are really easy for AI, like looking through a contract and pulling information out. That's a very objective process. Either the information's there or it's not, and that's something AI can handle really well. When you get into the complexities of relationship, that's where it's probably a bit more important to make sure that everything is as it should be. And again, that's where the human loop becomes important.
Fantastic. I mean, we've got quite a few questions coming up on sort of spotting those instances of inaccuracies or conflicts. So I will come on to that shortly. But as we bring up the next slide, look, we'll talk about this, the written and legal side of things. Kasia, as we know, supplier relationships they're not just a personal or business surface level relationship, right? They're underpinned by written and legal contracts, KPIs that are in there, other commercial documents that kind of back all these things up. They can be long and they can be complex, and I'm sure many of those watching have experienced some very long and complex procurement documents before. What are the limitations of AI in processing kind of really long documents? How does it handle complex documents, over 100 pages sometimes, and cross-reference those with other documents? What's your kind of response on that?
So I shortly address these limitations, and that's going to be sort of elaboration to the previous question, how to overcome these challenges. So basically, one of the biggest limitations of AI right now in processing very lengthy contracts or documents in general is the context window. So most large language models can only process a limited number of words at a time. And it is also important to note that different large language models has different limitations. So that has to be chosen appropriately as well. So basically that means when we are dealing with hundreds of pages, AI might lose track of important details from earlier sections. Another challenge is handling complex cross-references, such as clauses referring to different sections, appendices, or even external documents. AI can struggle to maintain accuracy when jumping between these references. And to overcome these challenges, we use several techniques. One approach could be chunking, meaning where the document can be just basically split into smaller sections while maintaining logical connections. We also use something called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, and this allows AI to dynamically search for relevant sections instead of relying just on the memory. And another technique is already mentioned, fine-tuning AI models on a specific document structure, helping them better understand either legal or financial or technical cross-references. And I would also add here a hybrid AI human review ensures that AI-generated insights are checked for accuracy, especially in high-stakes scenarios. So that's basically it, but also monitoring, evaluating, and setting some sort of benchmarks would be very helpful to monitor the accuracy given in the output. So at Resolution, we've been basically testing these different techniques on Harry Potter books, analyzing where AI loses context, and we were refining our approach to ensure the best results. So it's not just one solution, it really depends on a use case, and then we can choose the best technique. And as AI is still evolving, we expect significant improvements in long context processing. In fact, this is the priority for many model providers at the moment. They really want to focus on this context window to make it just extended and document comprehension at the same time. And that's going to be more reliable for complex and multi-page documents processing in the future.
Okay, that's really interesting, and the Harry Potter use case is very interesting. I'm sure lots of people perked up there. It's huge amount of context, and I'm sure there'll be some Harry Potter fans who would like to give it a test run for its money. But that is a significantly long document, I suppose, manuscript that is an interesting use case. And how have you found that? How have you found reviewing that? Is it been a kind of has it evolved quite rapidly in its understanding of the context and its understanding of being able to pull out key information? I don't know, Faye, whether you're best to answer or Kasia, or I'll let one of you come in.
Well, I can give a high level from the Harry Potter use case. We wanted to make sure that it understood what it was reading, and to see what the outputs were. And Kasia, I remember you shared with me that it was able to pick up the key themes from the book and what's important, talks about friendships and things like that. So it was brilliant to test other material, and see how much the AI can really do with extreme amounts of text, essentially.
Brilliant. We've had an interesting question on that, on the sort of reading and understanding documents around can it spot duff information or confliction in contracts ahead of signature? So I guess when a clause conflicts with another clause in the same contract, is Matthew makes the comment that cut and paste often happens in contracts and things like that, and that can lead to conflicts. And how good is it at spotting that kind of thing?
Yeah, we have a specific model for that can find gaps, ambiguities, can check to see how things align with the goals that were there for the relationship and the agreement. So it's very good at doing that is the short answer. And it can do it in many different contexts. So you can compare documents against documents, documents against goals and principles, and it's very strong in that area.
Brilliant. Kasia, did you have anything to add on that?
Yes, sure. So it is basically how you're going to put different contexts together and which insight you get from different pieces and put it together with different techniques, different contexts. You can put it together and make very valuable insights.
Brilliant. I hope that helped answer your question, Matthew. And I'm sure it's probably a challenge that you've come up against. So it could be a useful solution. I suppose to summarize that, last 5 minutes or so, there are some really long and complex documents out there, and AI is evolving and learning how to kind of process those. And as you've shown, Kasia, there are methods to overcome some of those challenges, such as the chunking process. But it's also there to help you read and understand documents, I suppose. And that's another challenge that a lot of procurement and supply chain professionals, I'm sure, face, especially when procuring quite technical products or things that they may not have procured before, to get an understanding of what a document might say and what certain terminology means. How useful is it in providing you with a, I guess, an elevator pitch of what exactly that document is saying? I mean, I've even used it at times for looking at new legislation coming through and trying to get an understanding of the kind of key angles. Is that something that is of use, Faye?
Yeah, and it's really important actually because there are different industries, and different industries contract in different ways. So if we give an example, construction, they have very different agreements and standard forms in and of themselves. and the AI needs to be able to understand that. And then when we think about terminology, this was touched on before by Kasia, but there are some industries that have very specific terminology. And again, the AI needs to be able to understand that. So it's not just, oh, this is a contract, and it's a contract for goods or it's a contract for services. It's, oh, this is a contract for goods and it's in the manufacturing sector. And this is the subject matter that we're talking about. And as it's going through, it's saying, oh, that terminology, yes, I know what that means, which is really important to then produce sensible output. So there's many layers to it to get it right. But then that's the beauty of what AI can do.
Interesting. And you mentioned the manufacturing sector there. Are there other sectors that, have got quite unique and difficult challenges? I suppose one that comes to mind, and we've had a few questions on it that we'll come to in a bit, is the public sector. We've had new legislation come in this week, in the UK at least. It's obviously they've got different requirements in terms of transparency and things like that to fulfill. So can it, if you provide it with that context in the first place that this is a public sector procurement process, would that help kind of with the AI's output?
Absolutely. So we've actually built models for different sectors so it understands. If I give an example, so I've talked about construction, there's obviously public sector, but there are things like oil and gas. There are contracts that, for example, have Incoterms in there. So it needs to understand what that is and what that means in the context of the agreement. There are so many nuances. If we go to public sector and we think about different departments, there's MOD who used DEFCONs. There is so much that is different about different sectors. So you cannot just say, oh, it's a contract or it's a buyer-supplier relationship. You have to go deeper than that. And that's where understanding industries and ways of working is really important and has been considered in our processes.
Yeah, and it's clearly a cooperative approach, as with any supplier relationship management should be. As we'll move on because we've had an interesting question come in, that's something that we're already going to cover actually, and if we can bring up the next slide on human sentiment and emotions. And it's a question that is posed regularly. It's a question that, if you think about AI, the immediate knockback to a lot of people, from a lot of people's perspective, is, well, it's great at kind of giving you an answer and a response, but unless it's incredibly detailed prompt, or it can't understand the kind of human context at this stage. What would you say to that, Kasia? How does AI understand sentiment and emotions? These are really critical in supplier relationships, right? They set the context for where you're at, because it might not be the first time you've had this situation. So can you just give an example, or kind of some a response as to how it sort of brings that in?
Sure. So AI understands sentiment and human emotions using something called natural language processing and sentiment analysis models. But to not bore you with the technical details, these models analyze text, tone, and the context to determine whether a piece of communication is positive, negative, neutral, or even more nuanced emotions such as frustration, excitement, sarcasm. AI does it by breaking down the language into keywords, sentences, emotional indicators. For example, words like fantastic or thrilled suggest a positive sentiment, while words like disappointed or frustrated indicates a negative sentiment. And more advanced AI models go beyond just words. They analyze tone, intensity, and even the relationship between the words to detect human emotions. Moreover, AI can also process voice and facial expressions in a speech and video analysis. So AI-powered sentiment analysis help businesses understand customer or supplier emotions in real time, allowing them to respond appropriately. And we use AI-driven sentiment analysis to enhance communication and also detect some risk. This is making AI-driven interaction feel more natural and empathetic.
Great, and it's interesting to hear the development of how it's gone beyond natural language processing now to try and understand tone, and I suspect we give away more than we think we do in a kind of written response or written paragraph. There's a question, and a really interesting question here, around how AI might manage the emotional intelligence that procurement professionals feel very strongly about, obviously, that they bring to contract management of complex situations, that kind of thing. But is that something you can talk to? And it
Yeah.
might, maybe it speaks back to that point around it enables procurement to go to do more and become more emotionally intelligent and come into situations where it is required. But I'll let you respond.
Yeah, so emotion is a fundamental part of any relationship. So it is critical. And I don't know if those on the webinar caught the last slide, but there was an image there and it's actually taken from one of our digital experts. And you can see that it responds to the emotion. So somebody is saying to the digital expert, I feel, which is AI, I feel really frustrated. This is what's happened. These are the issues I'm facing into. And the AI is expressing empathy in the way that it responds, first of all, and then it's recognizing that this is a really stressful situation. And so it's gearing the solution to the context, which is not just the objective subject matter, there's a contractual issue. It is, oh, and this individual is feeling really stressed and strained. So what is the best route forward? And that's really important. And there are other parts of our platform where that's key as well. To negotiation, you need to understand the emotion, the emotional triggers to be able to get to a sensible resolution at the end. So that's something that I'm very passionate about because it's that human piece. And that's why we say we've got human-centered AI. I think all AI should be human-centered because that's a critical part of business and relationships.
Fantastic, thank you. I mentioned it earlier in the agenda, but we wanted to come on to how the challenges of, I guess, implementing it within your tech stack. It's one of the bigger challenges that we often hear is we'd love to experiment with it, or we are experimenting with it, but we're not quite sure how to integrate it into our current stack, and it can be a stumbling block and an obstacle that takes time and thought to kind of overcome. So with the fact that it evolves so rapidly as well, how can procurement leaders kind of integrate advanced AI solutions into their workflows without disrupting the operations and the processes that, or that are still reliant on many of the kind of traditional or legacy systems? One for you, I guess, Faye.
Yeah, so there are so many really smart AI solutions. I would say for many large enterprises and big procurement teams, even smaller ones, you have your fundamental solutions that deal with the administration already. That's great. That's a core system. You don't need to get rid of it because AI is here. But you do need to consider the challenges that you still face and where it would be helpful to have extra support. And that is where AI can come in. And that should be how you inform your tech stack. So you'd have a core system, but then you'd have specific tools to help you with your burning issues and challenges. And I think the really fantastic thing about AI versus software. So when you buy a static software solution, it does certain things. It's about rigid code, it produces output, that's kind of it. And it either offers the functionality or it doesn't. Whereas AI gets smarter. So it can now do tasks and you can add more tasks to it. And it gets smarter in the way that it does things and the output that you get. And that means that the outer area of your tech stack with these new solutions should serve you for the long term because AI actually evolves with you. It evolves with the organization. It evolves with the challenges. It evolves with the shifts that we see. And that's another thing that I think is really exciting.
Great. Yeah, it's that integration process, right? That's the key point, I think. And is there the question is there a move away from the kind of whole single suite of products where they're supposed to cover all, but sometimes there are specifics that you need them to feed into. And I guess one question a couple of people have put is how does it integrate in with maybe existing platforms? Can you just
Yeah, so in terms of integration, many AI platforms, including our own, are standalone cloud. which is really important because that's nice rapid integration. You can be up and running in a week or two. However, I mentioned those core systems that many organizations have. You can integrate with those to pull, I don't know, supplier names or contract details or other information through. I think the other piece to add, which I haven't said so far, is that another positive is about how you use the tool. So with our traditional software tools, it's a lot of data entry. It's very manual, and actually that's a whole job in and of itself. Whereas AI is almost autonomous. You're not there typing lots of information to produce the output. And really advanced platforms, you can actually speak to the AI. You don't even have to type. You can just have a conversation. And that's something we've been really passionate about. And you're seeing that on different tools as well. So it really is an evolution that can complement the more traditional core solutions.
Interesting about the speaking. I often find that I will say something differently to how I will write it, and that can be sometimes the difference in being clear and using human language rather than sort of trying to over kind of do it, I suppose. Kind of brings us on to, the AI native solution that you mentioned earlier, Kazia, and can you just explain what we mean by AI native? It's something that I've seen in messaging before and things like this, but can you kind of explain what it is, what the difference is between AI enhanced or AI native, and how it evolves?
Sure. So shortly, AI native means AI is the core of the business or product. Broadly, products can fall into two categories. As you just mentioned, those that can incorporate AI for added automation or efficiency, and those that fundamentally depend on AI for their primary value proposition. These are the AI native products. They leverage advanced AI technologies like machine learning or natural language processing, as the one I mentioned already, or even computer vision or automatic speech recognition to drive their core functionality, making AI essential rather than an optional component. And to ensure that AI native product continuously improves with the market trends, it is crucial to adapt to this AI landscape. And as I already said before, these AI large language models are launched very frequently, each excelling in different areas. So one model might be great at reasoning, while another performs better at summarization or information extraction. And staying ahead requires continuously evaluating, testing, and selecting the best models for a specific solution that ensures us with optimal performances.
Interesting. Yeah, it's finding that difference, right, between the two and understanding how it evolves at a different rate. Faye, is there anything you kind of had to add to that sort of AI native sort of topic?
Just touching on what I said previously, software is so static, and that's why this is so exciting. It evolves daily in capability. For anyone who follows AI, they'll see that loads of new models have kind of popped up. And we've never before had a way to get better every day than we do now with AI. And it's just a very exciting time to be alive, I'd say, in terms of these day-to-day jobs that we have to do, and now this amazing tool that we have to support us in driving the best outcomes.
Yeah, and look, don't want to scare anyone. It's still an opportunity. I think that lots are seeing there are challenges involved, and you should be careful, as you've already said, about not just relying immediately on it, and working closely with whether it be a supplier such as yourselves or the platform that you're going to use. But is there a kind of notable and growing gap between organizations in terms of tech adoption, and is that narrowing or widening, do you think, with the advent of kind of AI being so universally adopted and used now?
Yeah, I think there definitely is a difference between those who adopt AI and those who don't. And there is a gap. I think, market leaders they move forwards quicker, right? They're leading the market. And I think there's a real opportunity for professionals to really embrace AI. It makes a difference that sometimes you can't see. So if you're dealing with another company, behind the scenes, they may have lots of AI tools that are just helping them with efficiency and productivity and precision. Whereas you've got another organization who's facing into them with manual processes, old systems, legacy systems, resource issues. That is going to make a difference. It's going to make a difference to your ability to navigate supplier environments, your competitive edge and advantage, the outcomes that you can drive. So that is a material gap. It's almost like having email and not having email and writing letters instead. That is the difference that AI is making. So I would advise everyone to use emails over just written letters. And so, yeah, AI is just making a huge difference. And sometimes it's obvious, but sometimes behind the scenes, organizations are just much more efficient and slicker because they've started to implement this. And I would encourage procurement professionals to consider what's needed for their environment. For some of the organizations I've spoken to, there are big activities going on in the organization where they're looking for certain things, but know what you need as a procurement leader within your own team and push for it so that you have the efficiency you need to deliver the outcomes you need to deliver.
Fantastic. And Kasia, I've got quite a big question for you now. Do you think that AI could eventually replace human intervention in dispute resolution? Is that where you see this going?
Top question. Can AI replace us? Yes and no. That means AI provides us with great, powerful tools that can help us, that can transform businesses' operations through, let's say, document processing in this particular use case we are dealing with, or pattern identification, process acceleration. And by strategically delegating these time-consuming tasks to AI system, companies can increase efficiency and redirect human capital towards higher value activities. However, the most successful implementations recognize that nothing can replace authentic business relationships built on trust, empathy, and mutual understanding. So I would say the optimal approach leverages AI to handle some aspects of work while preserving human involvement in relationship building and complex decision making.
Fantastic. I feel like that's a great point to kind of come on to some additional questions that we've had in. So lots of really interesting ones, and we've already covered lots as we've gone through. But thanks everyone. There's loads of questions coming in. So bear with me as I fire some at you, Faye and Kasia. One is, we've CIPS is a global membership body. We've got a global audience on today. On that train of thought, how does it handle multilingual requirements when building AI solutions? Kasia, I don't know if you can answer that one.
Okay, so right now, many AI large language models support multiple languages, as they are trained not only on English data sets, but also on Spanish, French, German, Chinese, many more. Additionally, several countries are developing their own models that excel not only in local languages, but also in capturing cultural nuances and context-specific knowledge. That is very interesting. Example could be, for example, Mistral from France, and very popular model. The foundation of multilingual AI solution begins with selecting large language model trained on diverse linguistic data sets, ensuring broad language support and contextual accuracy. And this is crucial for not only clear communication, preventing misunderstanding as well in global procurement workflows where precise interpretation of contracts or supplier negotiations and compliance documents is essential. Moreover, integrating adaptive learning mechanism and fine-tuning AI models with real procurement data can further enhance language understanding.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Got a couple of questions around whether you've got any examples of how your platform has resolved or managed conflict. And Faye, I don't know if there's any, and don't worry, I'm not expecting you to, share names or exact case studies, but any examples of a situation that has been improved from the tool that Resolution brings?
Yeah, so I'll talk in terms of functionality. As part of our platform, we have mediation. So you can actually enter into mediation with another company that's led by AI, and it looks at very specific things. So it takes into consideration contractual issues, industry, behavioral science in terms of how to get people to a meeting of minds. And that's something very specific and an example without going into a company use case.
No worries, thank you. One question we've had around is a few questions actually around public sector and a big thing around transparency. As I mentioned, the Procurement Act came into force this week in the UK, but I'm sure this is something that global public sector procurement professionals have to take into account. Is that transparency work? And we've got a few questions. How could AI maybe be used in collating feedback for bidders? Is there an opportunity there that it's potentially more objective or less? What would be your points on transparency in public sector when using AI for making decisions on contracts and suppliers and things like this, Faye?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think AI is a really effective tool because it's objective. So it can work to very specific rules. So when we think about things like scoring, you can't get a more objective process than that. It's looking at the rules, it's looking at the content, and it's being really specific and precise about how it's scoring, which means that in feedback, you can get better quality feedback, and you can also have greater trust in the process that's taken place. So sometimes we think of conflict of interest and elements that come up there. AI ensures the process is not just objective, but it's fair. And I think that's something that can be quite transformative.
Great. And another question on how it can be used to measure the performance of suppliers. Again, as we've seen in the Procurement Act, there is a growing requirement for setting KPIs and then following up with KPIs on how suppliers are performing. Is that something it could support on and in what way? Faye, I'll come to you again, but Kasia, I might come to you afterwards if that's okay.
Absolutely, because if we think about KPIs, SLAs, OKRs, the AI can track the performance, but it can also engage with the other party. And that is a much fuller process than what some organizations have today, which is a spreadsheet with SLAs and it's green, amber, red, and you kind of just go through the spreadsheet. It can do much more. And without going into our platform, we've got tools like that that go much deeper, and it makes a huge difference. Again, it's taking a process and it's managing the whole flow. And that is the difference. It manages the whole flow, including interactions.
Great. And I think there's real potential here to save time for a lot of public sector work, and there is increasing requirements on them to work with these transparency rules. So that is a big part of what AI can potentially do, right? If you use it in the right way. Kasia, a question around sorry, it's just disappeared off my screen. How does AI deal with copyright laws? Is it covered by fair use policies? Is this anything that you have to kind of consider from a resolution perspective, or is it different because it's not necessarily an open platform? Faye, have you got anything to add on that?
So copyright is interesting. I think I'll go from the angle of closed environment. So if you think about models like OpenAI and ChatGPT, which is the front platform that you see, information you put on there is not secure. It's shared, it's used to train OpenAI's models. It's not yours. When you buy an AI solution, they should have a closed environment like we do. They should have the right agreements in place with the providers to prevent them using data for training models and to create guards and barriers and isolate data. And that's really important. And then if we go from how models are trained, again, we have our own IP, and that's how we train models. versus kind of ChatGPT that reads the internet and searches online, and you don't know the quality of the information it's looking at, whether it's accurate or not. So I take it from that angle that when you buy an actual solution, it's much better in many ways.
Brilliant. And Kasia, just following on from that, the collaboration effort between, for example, Resolution and a client you might have, what does that look like? Is it something that you're constantly feeding back on and working together on to kind of better inform the platform if, you know, things are reviewed from a contract perspective or procurement guidelines might change? How does that work from a Resolution side?
We do have our API, as Faye just mentioned, to provide information to these fine-tuned models in order to face clients' expectations. However, using new information from new clients for training purposes wouldn't be ethical. We are not doing that. We secure data from our clients and just using our already existing trained models to, as I said, to face their problems or their expectations.
Brilliant. Well, that's pretty much all the time we've got for today. So, I mean, loads and questions as ever on AI. Really, really useful. Thank you, Faye and Kasia, for answering them so well. But one more question for you, Kasia, and and we can kind of tie this into how Resolution can support. What is your call to action for procurement leaders who may recognise there's been quite a heavy focus previously on the day-to-day process, but they're excited to shift that with AI, but how do they do that? What's your kind of call to action for them?
Sorry, excuse me, I didn't hear the entire question. Could you please repeat?
Sorry, yes, one for Faye, I think was the plan. What's your call to action, Faye, for procurement leaders? You may recognise that they need to shift, but historically have been kind of dependent on day-to-day processes.
Yeah, so I would say, processes are important, but we have technology now that can do so much more. And that relationships drive success. I truly believe that. And it's shown through all the work that I've done. It's about relationships. So take time to think about your challenges that you have and look for the solutions that can do that for you so that you can do more, essentially. I do think the heart of effective procurement and buyer-seller relationships is the people, and it will always be the people. But AI empowers people to do what they need to do really well.
AI empowers people to do what they need to do well. That's a great takeaway message, I think, and hopefully eases some concerns around procurement headcount and things like that. It's an empowerment tool, not necessarily a replacement tool. Before we go, Faye, just as one of our CIPS official knowledge partners for this year, do you want to just give a final overview of how people can get in touch with you, and how Resolution can support CIPS members and other procurement and supply professionals? And we've got a final slide we can just bring up to kind of support your response there.
Yeah, so I think the website is there in an email address. It's hello@resolution.com, resolution with 2 I's. We focus on the complex part of relationships between buyers and suppliers. We look at things from obligations and delivery to conflict disputes, right the way to continuous improvement. We've got specific things that our platform does, but we also build bespoke functionality for organizations, dealing with liquidated damages, bid assessments and scoring. It's vast. So I would say get in touch, even if to ask questions from either of us or from the team. We're just happy to support. As I said, the mission behind this was kind of transferring over to the other side to build a platform that really supports the community I've come from.
Brilliant, thank you. And I don't know, I didn't get to every question today, so please do feel free to get in touch with Faye and Kasia and put your questions to them over email if I didn't get the chance. And there's that hello@resolution.com there, resolution with 2 I's. Brilliant. Well, that's all the time we have today. Look, a huge thank you to everyone who sent your questions in. It really added to the discussion, I thought, and made my job a little bit easier. So really appreciate it. But there were some great questions, and I hope we answered them as well as we could. Thank you to Resolution, of course, for supporting today's session. And of course, a huge thank you to today's speakers, Faye and Kasia, again, for making my job nice and easy and giving lots of useful and insightful responses. Look, we know AI is a critical topic for professionals and CIPS members at the moment. It's something we've been trying to cover a lot in our content. Do go and check out. We put a special report on CIPS Download at the back end of last year, so that's available on the special report section of this CIPS Download platform. So do go check that out when you get a chance. But we're also bringing AI into the CIPS training program. We've got 2 sessions coming up in April and May, delivered by our partners TPP. The first is a dedicated session for procurement leaders to support in learning some of the building blocks for developing a successful AI strategy. And the second, which is in May, kind of provides professionals at all levels with a kind of more comprehensive foundation in AI, building on some of those things we talked about today. It's obviously fundamental that you understand the principles and how it will and can impact the procurement lifecycle, which we obviously brought up earlier on. So very much building on some of these areas and offering you a chance to get your head into the world of AI, agentic AI, all of those things we kind of talked about today, native AI. So yeah, brilliant. And we'll also be covering it at the CIPS Futures Conference in London, which is on the 1st of July this year. If you're in London or you're in the UK at the time, please do come along. Registration is now open. You can bag your tickets with our super early bird deals and hear some practical use cases of those using AI or those trialing it and how it's impacted their procurement function. Finally, just a note, don't forget to take this year's salary survey. It's open for another couple of weeks. Don't leave it to the last minute to fill it out, though, if you can help it. We've really tried to reduce the number of questions this year and make it easier for you than ever. So please do go along and take that survey. It really helps us with the results and gives us better insight for you when you want to benchmark your salary, for example. But that is it for now. We've got plenty more coming up. We've got another webinar on AI and its impact on intake management coming up next week and really targeted at the kind of Middle East region. So if you are in that region, do join us for that one. But take a look at the webinar hub as ever while you're here with us on CIPS Downloads, and we'll see you again soon. Finally, you will receive a follow-up email to watch this session back on demand. So don't worry, and do share with your friends and colleagues who might be interested. But for that, I will leave you to it and to enjoy the rest of your day. So thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.